Hey, Andrew here from the Investors Way. Welcome to Woody's Weekly Wisdom, episode number 4 already. Fantastic. And thanks once again for all the awesome feedback we've been getting on these episodes. It's really positive to hear that you're getting something from them and learning and enjoying what we're doing. So that's fantastic, and we're going to keep putting them out there for you. So the first 3 episodes we've focused on some of the negativity in the media. So today I wanted to dig a little deeper into something a little bit more positive, so that we get a bit of balance in these weekly Woody Wisdoms. And today I'm looking at an article written by the Property Club, which I'm a part of and have been for a long, long time. And this one is focused on the benefits of migration to Australia. Now, if you're from outside Australia, I think this article will still, in this episode, will still have some benefit for you, because a lot of what we're seeing from this article is going to be happening in other parts of the world as well. And it all stems from predominantly a period of low migration, almost non-existent migration, caused by the pandemic. So a country like Australia, who have a minimum standard that they look to achieve through migration each year, when that number has obviously dropped to almost zero because of the pandemic, there's a little bit of catch up. And so the strong migration numbers that we're now seeing in this year, and is what are being projected to happen over the next decade and beyond, is going to have an impact on the economy. So if you're in the US or New Zealand or Canada even, you're likely to be seeing similar things with the migration levels in your country. Australia, I guess, being a little bit different in that we have relied on migration quite heavily in recent times to fuel our economy and to, I guess, support the economy rather than just fuel it, but support it. There's a lot of industries in this country that rely very, very heavily on migration, and even if it's not permanent migration, certainly annual migration of travellers, backpackers, and those people who take on some of these jobs that others are less willing to do. But in terms of the more permanent migration, this article is talking about what the benefits to the property market will be. And so what I wanted to highlight today is that what we're seeing from the migration is that it's going to create demand. And so, like any market in the world, it's all based on supply and demand. And so with migration, you've got people that need housing. And if that housing is not available from new stock, then they have to find it from existing stock. And we use the word stock loosely or generally to refer to the amount of properties that are available. And when you've got projected strong migration, what that normally does is flow on to the building industry and construction to suggest to that industry that they need to be building and constructing more properties in order to meet the demand created by migration. And what we're looking at right now is a market where we're hearing all about rising cost of living, rising interest rates, rising inflation. And what that's doing is it's actually catching a number of industries out, because their costs have gone up so dramatically, and there's not enough margin in their business. And we're seeing a lot of those businesses go out of business. And what is normal in a downturn and dare we say it, recession, is that one of the first industries to suffer this impact is the construction industry. So again, here in Australia, we are seeing a number of construction businesses, some of them quite reputable and large, are going out of business. And with this migration statistics suggesting that we're going to see a dramatic increase in the number of people coming into Australia looking for accommodation. And then we're seeing construction dry up. What do you think that leads to? It leads to a pressure. It leads to a pressure on supply. And when you get a pressure on supply, the next thing that happens is prices go up. So you're hearing all these negative things in the media, and hopefully you're not dwelling on them. I know it's almost impossible to avoid them, but to hear that these things are happening, just keep in the back of your mind that these good news stories or these positive outlooks don't tend to get the same amount of airtime. So here with our weekly episodes, we want to give them some airtime and suggest to you that some of the benefits that we're going to see from migration is a pressure on supply, which will then force prices up. So when you hear people saying, when is a good time to buy property? Well, it's always a good time to buy property. But right now, we're looking at an even better time to buy property in the coming 12 months, because we're going to see this influx of migration, this reduction in construction, because there's going to be a lot less businesses out there meeting that demand. And there's a struggle, right around the country and right around the world for materials and all those type of things. So construction is slowing, but demand is going to be increasing. And without the supply to meet that demand, it has to lead to one thing, and that's an increase in prices. So the good news for property investors or prospective property investors is that despite all the negativity, despite all the rising interest rates, if you've got capacity, then now is going to be a fantastic time to be buying properties, particularly if you're in those markets, or you can afford to be in those markets where the migration is going to be occurring the most. So it obviously starts in the bigger capital cities like your Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane areas before it flows to the smaller parts of the country or the smaller capital cities. And that would be the same in any country, that you generally see people migrating to the more populous areas. So in Sydney in particular, obviously it's a lot harder to enter that market because of the prices. But when you look at, say, the fact that Melbourne, it's already seen its prices come back to pre-pandemic levels. And you look at a market like Queensland or Brisbane, where prices are still above pre-pandemic, but they're also rising. And you're seeing the impact of the fact that it's an Olympic city in 2032, which seems a long way away. But in terms of people getting set and ready for those Olympics now, it's all happening now. So with migration coming in, a lot of those migrants will find that Sydney is just too expensive, so they will start to spread out and find other areas to go to. And I think Melbourne and Brisbane, and to a lesser extent Adelaide, will be, South Australia that is, will be benefiting from this increase in migration. And as you can see in this article, it talks about just in Greater Sydney, the population is predicted to grow by 6.1 million by 2041. That's a lot of people that are going to need to be housed. And at the current rate of construction, that is going to need to be factored in. And sure, that you just wouldn't be able to accommodate 6.1 million people in Sydney alone. So that's why it talks about Greater Sydney, because it's going to spread out. So we know that Sydney as a city is growing, and the epicenter is moving further and further away from the city itself. But 6.1 million people looking for homes is an enormous amount, and that's on top of the people that are just circulating in normal times. So I know 2041 seems a long way away, and it's an entire 1.5 property cycles. But that can show you why we often talk about, or I certainly always talk about the fact that the property cycle is every 9 to 10 years, and it means the property market will double in that time. So when you've got 6.1 million people coming into a city looking for housing, and you've got everybody else circulating in terms of the housing market, people downsizing, upsizing, all that type of stuff going on as well, then you create this tension, this pressure that will lead to prices going up. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight. It doesn't mean it's going to happen this year. But as I've been saying, at least for the last 2 months, if not more, what we're seeing and going to see in 2023 is a lot of different competing pressures or tensions in the market that mean there may not be that FOMO impact. So there won't be as much pressure or haste to jump in and grab something and pay over the top to get it. So you'll be in a perfect position if you've got access to funds and you've got the capacity to make the payments and meet the demands of the banks to get the money. You can really take advantage of this information and knowledge, knowing that there is a trend coming over the next decade and a half of migration that is going to fuel the demand for properties, which is going to fuel increases in prices. And like I've been saying with the stock market, with the amount of superannuation that goes into the market or retirement funds that is going into the market, that money that everyone is being forced to put into a retirement fund has got to go somewhere, and it's fueling stock prices going up. Well, this is a similar thing in the property market that we're seeing, where migration is going to fuel that demand, which therefore means either we have to create more supply, or if there's no supply, it just forces prices up. Now, we know that there will be a balance between the two. It's not like 6.1 million people are going to get dumped into the city and have to find an existing property. We already know there's an enormous amount of tension and stress in the property market in Australia, with a lack of availability of rental properties. And you still see populist politicians talking about the benefits that property investors get from a tax perspective. Well, if they weren't getting those benefits and they weren't investing and creating these properties for renters, then who would be? It's just a silly argument. And we need property investors to be out there buying properties and making them available to people who want to rent them. And that's just the nature and the circle of the property market. So this article, I haven't gone into every paragraph for you, but the simple fact is that there's a real significant trend happening in the property market for more properties to be constructed in order to meet the demand. And you can see here just this number here of 195,000 people coming in just in 22-23. That is a significant increase on prior year levels, even pre-pandemic, because we're trying to play a bit of catch up. So there's a lot of migration coming in, and it's going to create that demand for properties, which should fuel some supply in the form of construction, which is good for the economy, wages, and just general economic times, GDP, all that type of stuff. We want construction to be happening, but at the same time, it won't be able to keep pace with that migration demand, and therefore it can only result in one thing, and that's prices going up. So hopefully that's some positive news for those people who are contemplating investing, particularly if you're thinking about doing it in your super fund. Long-term investment in your super fund, they're going to do brilliantly well as a result of this tension that we've just talked about, which is a positive tension if you're a property investor and you're looking to grow your wealth. So look, if you want more information on how we can help you with this process of getting into the property market and growing your wealth for long-term financial security, reach out to us leave us a message, comment on the video, send me an email, send a carrier pigeon, whatever it takes. Get in touch, and we can have a conversation and see if there's a match between us and your needs and wants. And if there is, then that's fantastic, and we're happy to help you. So that is Woody's weekly wisdom episode number 4. Hope you got some real good value out of the fact that there's some positive news for the property market and prices and wealth creation. And I look forward to seeing you again next week for episode 5. And as always, leave us a comment, let us know what you think, and we'll see you again next week. Cheers.